When I first watched the trailer for Don't Worry, Darling months ago, I was intrigued, but also a little skeptical because it seemed that they were, the aesthetic that they were leaning on that seems to also frame the film, and I'm guessing is a part of a larger thematic framing. It's not just face value, it's not just aesthetic, but that imagery, that 1950s utopian American dream housewife, white feminist imagery is often used in sci-fi and thrillers throughout media, like video games, film, and television, almost as a crutch to kind of communicate oppression. And by oppression, I mean a very specific experience of womanhood and of whiteness in most cases. But now, given the recent circumstances, the mess that is surrounding Don't Worry, Darling, it's hilarious and sad, and I'm gonna see the movie and not for the reasons that I originally wanted to see the movie. The one thing that I'm gonna do is my best not to think about Chris Pine's lap being sprinkled with Harry Styles' spit when watching the film. I'm gonna try to go in with an open mind, despite everything I just said. But my one thing, because I get one thing, my one personal bias is, are they going to say the title in the film? Is Harry Styles going to say to Florence Pugh, "Don't worry, darling"? And if he does say it, is he going to say it? Like, will the line, "Don't worry, darling," be delivered with a cadence that lacks a comma?
My favorite thing about the movie is it feels like a movie. It feels like a real go to the theater, film, movie.
I don't know if you're ready for this. So the story is about Florence Pugh. Her character's name is Alice. It's definitely
Alice in Wonderland.
It's definitely Alice in Wonderland, which is immediately infuriating.
No,
okay?
I hate that. I hate that analogy. Go on.
Yes. I'm going to forget her name is Alice and call her Florence Pugh. She's married to Harry Styles. His character's name is Jack, I think. They live in Victory, which is a small suburban town as husband and wife with other husband and wives. All the husbands work at the same place, which is the Victory Project. And during the day, they all go to work. They all drive off to work into a zone that is known as the employees only zone. It is made clear to the audience that the wives don't really know what they do at work all day, and that it's a very hush-hush, high discretion kind of job, but there seems to be this verbal but non-verbal agreement that the wives stay at home and do their labor, and the men, the husbands, go to work during the day and do their labor. So still very 1950s mentality, okay? Florence Pugh and Harry Styles are happily married to the point that there's a part of the movie early on where Harry Styles gets home from work and Florence Pugh's like, "I made dinner," and he's like, "Oh, mashed potatoes?" And she's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Roast beef?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Dinner rolls?" So they start doing this foreplay thing where he just lists off food and they start making out, and then Florence Pugh lays down on the table, clears it with her arms and legs, like dinner rolls on the ground. It's very upsetting because they're trying to communicate to us immediately that they live in abundance, that it doesn't matter that Florence Pugh just spent hours making this large dinner for her working husband, because now they're gonna have sex on the table, and and Harry Styles eats out Florence Pugh for a good 5 minutes, and I was like, what about the food on the ground? It's also known that in their neighborhood, in their cul-de-sac, they live in a cul-de-sac.
You mean a cult?
No. The other wives aren't jealous of Florence Pugh, but they know that she and Harry Styles have a happy marriage because they have oral sex a lot. Florence Pugh starts like humming this song. She hums it when she's like cleaning the bathroom and when she's like vacuuming and like doing like housewife labor. Sometimes when her and the other wives aren't cleaning the homes, they take like the bus to a shopping center, and she seems to like, you know, socialize with the other women there. And she says, oh, I just can't seem to stop humming this song, but I don't know where it's from. That's like a line in the movie. Immediately, I'm like, wonder what that song is. Instead of me going, wonder what that song is on my own time.
Yeah.
Because it's not like something that's played on the radio. It's not something that Harry Styles sings. Like, it's not introduced in any other way other than Florence Pugh humming it a lot and then going, Then we are introduced to the main guy, the man who is like the boss of Victory. He's like the mayor, but not. And he's very rich because his house is like the best. It's Chris Pine. I forget his character's name, but he is modeled after real life psychology professor or ex-psychology professor, disturbed person, Jordan Peterson. And I wish I didn't know that going in, because everything that Chris Pine says is like Jordan Peterson misogynist sound bites. Florence Pugh and Harry Styles are like, there's a big party tonight at the boss's place or at whatever the fuck, Chris Pine's house. Yeah. And it's a great privilege. We're made aware it's a great privilege that they get to go to his house. Boss doesn't have people at his house over very often. So they're having a pool party. All the like cis het couples are like, whatever, doing their 1950s thing, which is like talking about work and shopping and
Nick Kroll's there.
Nick Kroll is there.
Okay,
his wife is Olivia Wilde. And they have zero chemistry and it's hilarious. There's like, you know, you haven't seen Chris Pine yet, and the wives and the husbands are like, oh, he's apparently going to make a little speech tonight. And then we are introduced to Jordan Peterson via these there's like slates that divide his house, and he's like walking through, so the light only comes through.
Oh, yeah.
It's like bars, but he's the one looking in, not like that he's entrapped. And he's just like, like he's just immediately evil asshole. And he, you know, gives a little speech and says he's so proud of everyone's hard work, and he understands the sacrifice that the wives are making. Which, again, at first I'm like, that's a thing you would say, because it's true that they are, you know, spending so much time at home cooking and cleaning, and that maybe in the 1950s that's the way that they would talk about that type of labor, not acknowledging that it's hard work, but maybe acknowledging that it's their duty as wives in order for their husbands to be able to work so hard during the day, and that is how heteronormativity is sustainable, supposedly, right? That he justifies it in that way. Again, that's like a lot of Jordan Peterson. The way that he talks is very like essentialism, and like this is the way things need to be because that's how lobsters are. Chris Pine gives his lobster speech, and then one of the wives, who we have not seen yet, she looks directly to Florence Pugh, but also she's like standing in the back of the crowd at this nice pool party, and she's like, we shouldn't be here. Except because it's to Florence Pugh, she says it to camera. Her name is Margaret. I remember her name. Margaret goes, we can't be here. And everyone's like, oh my God, Margaret, like, calm down. And her husband's like, hush now, dear. We can't, you know, it's not proper to speak out like that. She's like hushed away, and Chris Pine is like, now, Margaret's been having issues with her health. It's all good. It's a lot of stress on her husband. And Florence Pugh's like, that was kind of weird. And Florence Pugh wanders off because she lost Harry Styles. She doesn't know where Harry Styles is. And then she finds Margaret like in a separate area of the party, like away from everyone, and her husband is trying to give her like medication and she won't take it. And she does it again where she looks directly to camera but to Florence and is like, you don't know what they're doing to us. And it's like really like not, it didn't have the impact it should have because it was kind of like jarring in a way that was funny and not that I was like, oh my God, I'm so concerned about this person. And I don't think it's the actor's fault. I think it was like a directing thing, like 100%. She doesn't want to take the pills, and Florence Pugh's very confused by this. And then she finds Harry Styles, and she like kind of briefly mentions like, oh, I hope Margaret's okay. That was very odd. And Harry Styles kind of brushes her off. They start having sex, and Chris Pine watches them, but only Florence Pugh sees him see them.
Yeah.
And he's like being gross and he's like made a sexist speech and now he's watching Florence Pugh without her consent or Harry Styles' knowledge have sex. So weird things start happening with Florence Pugh slowly, where she's like, keep hearing that song, or I wonder what they are actually doing at work every day. And every time that's brought up, it's kind of like, oh, you know, you should just trust in Victory and you should trust in the project. There's this doctor character who's like the on-site doctor for Victory. Immediately, he treats hysteria. He treats, like, there's this like language being used that's often been used in the past to diminish usually women's mental health. So another thing is like me as an audience, I'm like, okay, don't like that doctor. Amongst the women, it's talked about that Margaret used to be normal, now she's going crazy. That's like the language that's used to describe Margaret's outbursts of her like having awake moments of something's wrong, we need to leave. And Florence Pugh seems to be the only character who has sympathy for Margaret, and I don't know what triggers that, and I don't know what triggers her remembering this song. So it seems very convenient that the film starts where it starts. I don't know what the inciting incident of the film is. Like, I actually don't know what it is. I might have to watch it again, but I don't think there's a proper inciting incident that feels earned or feels like it's intriguing enough
to like jumpstart the plot.
Yeah. And then I started to wonder if the movie should have been about Margaret and not Florence Pugh. She's just starting to have these weird, like, there's some visual, like memory blurps that seem out of place. There's also this repetitive, like, bird's eye view of women, like burlesque dancers dancing on a black stage, and they're like moving their legs and they're sitting in a circle, and you're like, oh, that's maybe something she saw on TV or whatever. Like, you think it's like maybe her dream, but it's like repetitive. Like, that visual is used repeatedly and in increasing segments throughout the film as Florence Pugh feels like something's wrong. And this Margaret character is like triggering Florence Pugh's curiosity. So next, Florence Pugh, she's like, her husband, Harry Styles is at work, and she's, either put away the groceries or make eggs. But we've seen her make breakfast prior and crack eggs, and yolk comes out. Yeah. And then there's a part where she holds up the egg and does this thing where it's like, I could feel that Olivia Wilde or the cinematographer or whoever was like, that's a strong image. But if Florence Pugh accepts her reality, she's not gonna like be acting like she's the lead character of the story. Yeah. So she like notices the eggs are too light, holds them up like really like, like very posed like an actor, and cracks them and nothing comes out. There's no yolk. And she's like, and then she like picks up another one and she's like right? And keeps like hitting that mark. And when the camera's pulled out, it looks weird because like, why would you hold, because like I couldn't tell if she was holding them up to the light or what she was doing, but I feel like she would have just like been like, oh, and then like cracked, like noticed it like a normal person. That keeps happening where there's scenes where Florence Pugh clocks something and does this whole picturesque pose scene, like just this whole like, it's very inauthentic. And it makes the movie like harder and harder to watch. Like, it feels disingenuous, even though Florence Pugh doesn't doubt her reality as of yet. She doesn't doubt the Victory Project. She doesn't doubt her husband. She's just curious and concerned for Margaret. So why is she acting like, Florence Pugh at one point, she thinks she sees because Margaret's her next door neighbor, standing on the roof of her house, and she's like, that's very concerning. I thought I saw her standing on the roof, and she's telling the other women at the shopping center about this. I'm kind of concerned about Margaret. Like, she had that whole outburst, and Olivia Wilde's character goes, oh yes, she made a whole scene at the party and she toppled someone's drink. Like, Olivia Wilde tells like a lie, and Florence Pugh's like, no, Olivia Wilde, that's not what happened. Margaret was unwell. Like, she seemed really unwell. She didn't topple someone's drink. That's gossip. And the other wives go along with Olivia Wilde's version of the story. They're like, oh, that Margaret, she's so crazy and blah, 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 right? Yeah. And Florence Pugh thinks that's odd that Olivia Wilde would lie and that they were, like, ready to go along with that version. A story that has obviously been fed to Olivia Wilde, even though she was at that party and saw what happened. So there's a disconnect there, and Florence Pugh doesn't like that. Then it is revealed via like horribly written dialogue that Margaret once walked out beyond the town into the like no man's land, and that she walked out there with her young son and they got lost in the desert, and then you can conclude that her son is dead.
Yeah.
And that it took so long for them to find her, and you know, it's her fault that she went crazy and lost her son. Why would she go out into the desert? That's ridiculous. We are safe here. That is verbally said by Olivia Wilde, and we're shown footage of Margaret walking around outside with her son. And it's like, I feel like that could have been hit better.
Yeah.
Again, that's why I was like, this story should be about Margaret. Like, it should start with her losing her son in the desert.
Yeah.
Why am I learning about it through like Florence's experience of Margaret? So it seems like a weird choice. Like, story structure wise, there's like something's off about that because it doesn't hit the way it should. And then one of the wives is like, well, Margaret thinks that they took her son to punish her. That doesn't make sense. And I'm like, yeah, that's weird. And they're like, weird, that's so weird. Like, it's like no big deal. And that it's like no big deal that one wife would like say that and not think twice about it. Yeah. And that Florence Pugh just goes, yeah, even though everything kind of is falling into place and the audience knows like, okay, that yeah, I wonder what's going on with that. This new wife is introduced and a new husband come to move to Victory, and they seem super out of it, and all of the other wives are welcoming her into the new town, and they're saying, yeah, just, you know, it feels like once you live in Victory for a while, you just forget about your old life before it. You just, because everything's so good here, and you know, Jordan Peterson, Chris Pine just takes such good care of us, and you'll love it here. And the new husband seems very nervous. The wife is out of it, and the new husband is like really excited, and he's just very honored to be a part of the Victory Project. And the men, the way they talk about their labor is that they're so proud that they get to be, that they were chosen. There comes a point where there's a scene where Florence Pugh is on the bus. She decides that she's not going to get off at the bus with all the other wives to go shopping that day after she's done her house cleaning job, and she stays on the bus, and the bus driver seems very wary of this, and he goes, well, I'm just going to loop back to town now, which is very reminiscent of the scene in the Truman Show when he tries to take the boat, but instead the Truman Show communicates something about Truman's character, which is the way that world controls him via his fears and manipulates him. But Florence Pugh is just like on this bus and is like, you know what, I am a fucking girl boss and I'm gonna figure this out and I'm gonna stay on the bus. And the bus driver is like confused by this, and he's like, obviously no one ever stays on the bus, they all get off to go to the mall. Florence Pugh thinks she sees a plane. She sees this plane in the sky, and she thinks she sees a plane crash, and she's like, oh my god, Mr. Bus Driver, did you see that? And he's like, no ma'am, I didn't see nothing, or whatever. And she's like, well, stop the bus, like I need to get off here. And he goes, well, I can't let you off here. And she goes, we need to go, like, so Florence Pugh logically is like, we need to go help that person. There's a plane that crashed. And the bus driver is like, I don't go down that way. And then she's like, well, that's ridiculous. And she grabs her purse and gets off the bus and like takes off her heels and starts walking into the desert. So she seems to be lost in the desert for a while, and she's like, hello? Which, because she is a housewife, she doesn't know what to do. She gets to this like metal staircase with this big metal dome thing, and there's like a window. And she like decides that she looks like shit, by the way. Like, she looks like overwhelmed. She's like dehydrated. She's unwell, and she presses against the window dome thing, and everything turns red, and it's like, whoa! And then cut to like dream sequence thing where you see the women sitting in a circle with their legs, and then you realize that it looks like the iris of an eye, and then an iris of an eye comes on, and I think it's Florence Pugh's eye, because it's like black in the middle, and then like the legs, but also the way an iris is shaped, and then you hear Chris Pine's voice being like, let go, or something like that, or he's like, it's like because Chris Pine's character also does like the radio for the thing, or he has like a radio hour, so he says things similar to Truman Show where it's like, we're meteor shower this morning, nothing to worry about, to justify the light falling from the sky. So it's like that, but it's very repetitive and just like, wives stay at home. So you hear like shit like that about being obedient and like trusting your reality, and there's like a drop of blood thing on white, and it's like, and then it reverses. There's a lot of the same footage used and then reversed to be spooky. And then there's this footage of these burlesque ballet dancers like dancing where they look normal and then they become like zombies, and it's like the worst thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, wow, Florence Pugh's really going through it. She has heat stroke, she's unwell. She wakes up at home in her bed and Harry Styles is drunk and cooking in the kitchen and he doesn't know how to make mashed potatoes. And she's like, baby, how did I get home? And he's like, oh, you were just home sleeping in the bed. When I got home from work, I thought you were just sleeping. And now I have to make supper, haha. But he's not really blaming her, but it's kind of like a sexist thing to say. Yeah. And she's like trying to, get him to stay with her. And she's like, no, I don't understand what just happened. Because I went out. She doesn't tell him right away that she went out to the desert. Yeah, but she's like, something's wrong. Like, why am I home? There's something about the doctor. So you're like, the doctor went to go get her or something like that. Or she was taken. The very next day, Florence Pugh barely talks about this. Because no one else knows that she went out there, which would be very, like, bad that if that was made known. She's at ballet dance, because all the women go to ballet dance at some point, which is, like, I don't know, it's, like, whatever. And she feels like something is wrong, and she starts leaving, like, there's, like, this, again, POV thing that mirrors, like, the dancing women legs, and she breaks away from the circle, and you hear the audio of Chris Pine being like, order is important, order is good. It's like Jordan Peterson podcast hour, except it's a fucking movie. Something that's said early on, like Jordan Peterson walks up to Nick Kroll and he's like, what is the enemy of victory? And then Nick Kroll's like, chaos. It's a theme that is made clear to us is if, one wife breaks away from the circle of dancers, like, what's going to happen then? Yeah. If you don't do, like, your duty, if you are not a lobster, then what will happen? Society will crumble, victory will fall, and then what? We all fall, right? So she breaks away from the dancers, looks in the mirror, and sees Margaret in the mirror, and Margaret lifts her head, she's, like, in the mirror, and she smashes her head, and, like, Florence Pugh freaks out, and then notices that Margaret isn't actually there, and all the other women are like, what the fuck? Because obviously, in Victory, it's like wrong to be mentally ill. Yeah. So Florence Pugh then leaves, and then she runs to her house and sees Margaret standing on the roof of her house, but in real, like it's real. And she's like, Margaret, no! And Margaret turns, and she slits her throat and falls to her death. And immediately, bunch of men in red jumpsuits grab her body, and then they grab Florence Pugh, and it's really funny because they run like this, and they grab Florence Pugh, and she's freaking out because she thinks she just saw Margaret commit and fall to her death. And then she wakes up and is told that Margaret is fine, and, you're being paranoid. Margaret was stitched up, and Florence Pugh was like, no, I swear, I saw her. So again, this thing where something happens, and then the other wives or the other men of Victory are telling her, actually, no, that's not what happened. Like, it's fine. You're not okay. So there's this big gala night, and it's apparently a big deal for the men because they might get promotions or whatever. There's this big party, and everyone's dancing. Dita Von Teese is there, and she does her martini glass routine, and it's definitely Dita Von Teese, and all the men are acting disgusting, and this upsets Florence Pugh, obviously, because how dare you speak to Dita Von Teese like that? Chris Pine is like on stage, and he's like, yes, welcome to Victory. He's like, yes, this is our world. And something that, like, again, clicked in my head was that he kept saying, this is our world, we built this. Yeah. Yes! Florence Pugh, during all this, is having a very bad time. She is not doing so hot, and she, at one point, is like, Harry Styles, I need to go home. Like, I need to get out of here. Something is wrong. I need to go home. He's, like, dismissing her. He's, like, drunk. He's whatever. And then Harry Styles is invited on stage by Chris Pine. And he is like, this man here is one of the finest engineers. He's apparently an engineer. And I'm so happy that he's on this team. He's really done well. And he keeps making eye contact with Florence Pugh. And I think all she can think about is how he watched them having sex and how he has like this like unspoken power over her. And he announces that Harry Styles is like being promoted. And it's like apparently a big deal. He's like senior supervisor of something. Yeah. And then Florence Pugh like leaves the stage party area to go to the bathroom because she feels really unwell. And then what follows is a very long scene of switching between Florence Pugh basically having a panic attack in the bathroom alone and Harry Styles Like Chris Pine is like, start the band, and they're like playing, and he goes, dance. And Harry Styles is like dancing and tap dancing, and then he starts doing this like flip, and Chris Pine is like, yeah, it's our world. It's the worst thing ever, because all it tells me is like, okay, Harry Styles will do whatever Chris Pine tells him to do, entertain the masses, haha. And I couldn't stop thinking, I wonder if Harry Styles feels like this is the same or different than what being in a concert is like, because obviously he's also a solo act in his musical career. So I'm like it's just Chris Pine screaming at him and berating him, and the crowd is like losing their shit as if Harry Styles is Dita Von Teese. Olivia Wilde enters the bathroom. She's like, Florence Pugh, your husband is... Why aren't you out there supporting him? And then Florence Pugh unravels. She's like, they're lying to us. Something is wrong. Margaret is like dead, I think. Something happened to her. Like, something is like very, very wrong. We need to get out of here. I can't. And Olivia Wilde hears her, and then she goes, you sound just like Margaret. Do you understand? Your husband is out there having the night of his life, and you are in here being selfish. Either the doctor visits Harry Styles and Florence Pugh's house and tries to prescribe her medication to help her. And Florence Pugh and Harry Styles say, no, she doesn't need that. It's okay. Like, I don't need that. It's good. It's made clear that Harry Styles is supposed to be British, because the doctor goes, what do you Brits say? Keep calm and carry on. And I know that line was put in during filming because Harry Styles is the only British character in the whole movie.
Yeah.
That he couldn't maintain an American accent for the whole film. So all those TikToks making fun of his accent, he's supposed to be British. Doctor leaves, but he leaves his briefcase because this plot is so fucking... there's so many holes in it. And then Florence Pugh, while Harry Styles and the doctor are outside to discuss, she grabs his briefcase because she notices that he has a file on Margaret, but everything in it is blacked out.
Yeah.
But what it says on the outside of the file is that she's a security threat, which Florence Pugh thinks is weird phrasing for someone who was seemingly doing mentally unwell and having like bad episodes and stuff. And that's language they start using for Florence Pugh. They start saying that she's having episodes when she starts to see the cracks in her world. The next day, Florence and Harry are hosting a dinner at their house. That's all they do. They just have dinners and have parties, and they work and clean, and she freaks out. That's the movie. And she keeps humming that song, like, continuously. It's either being hummed or it's dubbed over stuff that she's doing. So they're hosting a dinner, and Chris Pine is coming over. Nick Kroll is there. The other husband guy is there, and he's like, I can't get my wife to sit in a martini glass. And I'm like, shut up. While people are socializing and Florence Pugh is cooking in the kitchen, preparing dinner, Chris Pine corners her, and he goes, I knew you were catching on. It's like horrible. Like, it's like so corny. And she's like, what? And he goes, you asking questions about Margaret and you going out there, in referencing that she went out. So he knows that she went to the no man's land. She's like terrified. He says more stuff that he shouldn't know about her life. Then he's like, what are you doing here? That's right, you're cooking dinner in here like a good girl. And everyone in the theater was like, verbally went, ugh, because it's like corny, gross.
Yeah.
And also, imagine if Jordan Peterson said that to you when you were slicing your lemons for your lemonade. So then Florence Pugh is in this uncomfortable position in which she has been challenged by Chris Pine, the most misogynistic, gross man of them all, in her own home. And she does this thing which was where Harry Styles is clearly going to sit at the head of the table, and she's like no. She sits at the head of the table, and this makes everyone uncomfortable because there has been a shift. Yeah. And they're having dinner, and it's really awkward. And then Florence Pugh again prompts she prompts aloud, but now everyone is there. Oh, where did you two meet? Like in reference to the newer couple, and they say their meeting story, and she's like, that's the way that Harry Styles and I met, and it's the way that I think so-and-so met their husband, and it's the way that blah blah blah, and didn't you honeymoon in blah blah blah, and there's only like 3 honeymoon locations that all of the couples can name off, and it's like very awkward. And Florence Pugh is like, that's super weird and funny, something is wrong. I feel like he's lying to us. And she points at Chris Pratt. She goes, what's even in this food? Why do you control everything we do? Is this poisonous? Where does it come from? Like, she starts asking these questions that maybe you as a writer would ask, but maybe you wouldn't make your protagonist ask aloud in a way that feels undeserving and unauthentic and weird. Because I feel like if that character was challenged the way that she was by Chris Pratt, I don't know if she'd push for fear of what would happen, but instead she pushes, and she doesn't push because of a genuine character curiosity, but she pushes because it's like, you know, it's non-submissive. It's like what a feminist, like, modern, like, protagonist should do. But I don't know if she's, like, earned that, and it starts to feel weird that she starts, like, really pushing it, and I don't think it comes from anywhere. Like, it's not earned. And Chris Pine is like, it's okay, I'll explain. And then he's like, you know, really dismissive of her, and he goes, you know, your husband works so hard for you, it's important that we work together. And he goes, that's not what you said last night in my bedroom. So he, like, tries to frame her.
Yeah.
But Chris Pine's wife doesn't react to this, and no one brings it up ever again. That Chris Pine lied, but tried to suggest that, like, Florence Pugh was cheating on her husband, and Chris Pine's allowed to do whatever he wants. Like, no one is like, wait, what the fuck? Like, they're just like, oh, Florence, how could you? The wife of Chris Pine is like, you have disrespected us, and how dare you scream at us and, you know, question this man, this brilliant man who has built victory for you. How dare you? And she storms out, and everyone leaves. And then Harry Styles goes outside to talk to Chris Pine because he's in big trouble. Harry Styles comes back, and he's obviously pissed off that Florence Pugh freaked the fuck out at their dinner. At some point in this, she attempts to convince him, like, we need to leave. And she breaks down crying. And Harry Styles is giving nothing because he's Harry fucking Styles. And then he lies through his teeth and goes, okay, we have to go. And she's like, yes, we will go. You don't understand, we must go. I'll pack some clothes and we'll just drive, baby. We'll just drive. And he's like, okay. So then she goes, and then they're in the car, and she's sitting in the car in the driveway, and he sits down, and she's like, I got some food, I got some snacks that will probably make, you know, we'll make it to the outside of town. And then he starts doing this thing where he's like, baby, I'm so sorry. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, baby, I'm so sorry. And he scrunches up his face, but there are no tears coming out, and there's nothing. He's just squishing his face.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. And then the red jumpsuit guys come in, and they grab her from the car. It's actually hard to watch because Florence Pugh is, like,
it's good.
She's doing it all. And he's just like, baby, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Because you know that he wasn't going to leave with her. There's no way. Something that he makes clear repeatedly throughout the story up until this point is, I did this all for you and us. We could lose this. You don't understand. Like, this is a big deal. Don't freak out. Like, come on. Just, like, work with me here. And she's, like, carried off. And it's horrible. And then Harry Styles is left alone. And, you know, he grabs his steering wheel and he's like, fuck! But there are no tears, and he's like doing this whole actor thing, and it's just horrendous. Florence Pugh is then, I don't know what it's called when they put things right here and then they're trying to rewire your brain. They do that. Couldn't watch that because I find that really disturbing. We're getting close. We're just, you fucking wait. So they do that.
Was it all a dream?
You know, it feels kind like of the reason why you go.
Oh, just you wait. This is like hour 25. And I was like, I'm ready for this to fall apart. For this Truman Show ripoff fucking Ex Machina bullshit to just... So while they're, you know, completely destroying Florence Pugh's memory, you see Florence Pugh make eye contact with a nurse who is dressed like the leg ladies, like burlesque dancers, and then she turns into a normal modern nurse, and then wide shot, Florence Pugh is a nurse. She's a modern woman with a phone, and she lives in the real world. She's not in the 1950s. This is clear it's a flashback. I don't think Olivia Wilde wanted me to know it was a flashback, but I was like, this is a flashback.
Yeah.
She comes home to her normal apartment and is like, baby, I just finished a 15-hour shift, like announces what we just saw. Harry Styles is sitting at a computer He's got a computer like this and a computer like this because he is a Twitch streamer and he is sitting at his computer. He has long hair and he's like unkept and he's like has these glasses and he's like, the hot water's still not working. And this whole thing. They live in an apartment. He's also American in this scene. He has an American accent. I don't know why. And she's like, oh, there's no hot water, guess I'll shower tomorrow or whatever, it's fine. And he tries to like hug her and she's like, I'm too tired. And he's like, oh. And I immediately knew the rest of the movie. And yet I kept watching. She goes to bed, wakes up in Victory, present day, but she's in 1950s Victory. Olivia Wilde checks in with her. She's like, yeah, I just feel really lightheaded after the procedure because she is made to believe that the procedure was because she had like an accident. Everything is fine. Harry Styles is like being nice to her. You know, everything's good in her 1950s house doing her whole thing. And then she has this like pain, like this like this whole, like this, there's this whole thing where you're shown the legs and the eyes and Chris Pine talking and she's like having like her brain is like breaking. Harry Styles is like, baby, what's wrong? It's just another episode, it's okay. And Florence Pugh is giving it her all and she's like, no, you took my life, and like screaming, you took it. Flashback, she's a nurse. Harry Styles is on Twitch and he's listening to Chris Pine say shit like, welcome to the Victory Project. You must understand that this is a high discretion project and this can be your world. Because Harry Styles is an incel who hates his girlfriend who won't fuck him because she works all the time and he does nothing or whatever. We are then shown fragmented footage interspliced with Florence Pugh giving it for the Oscar, screaming in pain and agony as her memory clicks back into place. And Harry Styles is like, it's okay, and we hear the song being hummed by Harry Styles in their normal life. And you realize that song that Florence Pugh was like, something's weird, I don't know where that song is from, is a song that Harry Styles sang to her as he kidnapped Florence Pugh's sleeping body, set up his at-home VR system, laid Florence Pugh down, confirmed that she was his wife in Victory, and that they had a relationship prior to Victory, that he will remain discreet. Clockwork Orange has her eyes like this, squeezes eye drops into her eyes, puts some drops into her open, unconscious mouth, and then lays down next to her and puts on his own Clockwork Orange things that are then shown to be scanning their eyes with this red laser, and they lay together, and it's like, hello, you are entering the Victory Project. And then you realize that Victory and the world that Florence Pugh lives in is not real, but a VR world that is created by Chris Pine, the ultimate incel mastermind who has a Twitch channel.
I have to go.
No, you have to, let me take a bite of my muffin. So then, Florence Pugh, in Victory, grabs this glass, like the scotch glass, smashes it down on Harry Styles, who is hugging her. Baby, please, kills him with this glass. Her white dress stained with red blood that doesn't look like real blood. Olivia Wilde enters her home, I don't know why, and she's like, you have to get out of here. You don't understand what they'll do to you. If the men die here, they die in the real world. If you die in the dream, you die in the real world. If you dream in the dream, you dream in the real world. And Florence is like, you knew? And Olivia's like, yes, I'm here by will. This is the pacing. Like, what I'm about to say to you is how it is in the movie. Olivia Wilde goes, yes, I'm here by choice. And Florence Pugh goes, but your children, because Olivia Wilde has children, your children, Olivia Wilde, they're not real. The kids aren't real here, okay? But they're real for me, because in the real world, they left me. They're not there anymore. But here, I get to stay here forever, and they're alive forever here. 15 seconds, we learn that Olivia Wilde is there by will, but the other wives are not. And she is there because she wants Nick Kroll to be her husband, and she wants to avoid the fact that she cannot properly mourn or grieve her children, who are apparently dead in the real world. And that she can pretend to be a 1950s housewife in this VR world. And she goes, but you have to leave. Florence Pugh is like, okay. And she goes, they will kill you here if they find out what you've done to Harry Styles. Florence Pugh walks outside of her house, and Nick Kroll's like, hey, what the? Because she's covered in blood. Harry Styles is dead. She walks to the middle of the cul-de-sac for no reason other than dramatic effect. The light fixtures start blowing up. I don't know why. I don't know if someone's shooting at them or if the light fixtures are just blowing up. All of the men in the scene are like, oh my god! Oh no, it's falling apart! Because they've realized that the wives know or something. Or that Florence Pugh has broken the system because she's killed the person who brought her there. She gets into her Harry Styles car, and Olivia Wilde is like, go! The red jumpsuit guys. And then she's like driving, and there's a car chase scene in the desert, and the doctor is there, and he's like, stop her! And Chris Pine is at home, and he's like, where is she? Jack is dead. Oh no. Chris Pine is killed by his wife. Stabbed. And she goes, it's my turn now. And it's the worst thing ever. And she twists the knife and he dies. Florence Pugh is in the middle of the desert and she's driving and driving and driving. And then these two guys, she brakes and the two guys crash. There's this huge car crash. She kills the doctor and two of the husbands. And then she's driving up the hill and she's like, oh my god, I need to get out of here. I need to get to the edge of the world. The car stops. She peers over the side of the hill. The red guy, jumpsuit guys, runs to the edge of the glass. And then she has this brief moment where she imagines Harry Styles holding her. And it is in this moment that I'm like, did Harry Styles only eat her out because he felt guilty? Which I think is a great message to send to the entire audience. And then he's like, it's just you and me. She's imagining that he's holding her. And he's wearing normal clothes. And she's like, and then she pushes her hands against the glass again and lifts her head the way that Margaret bashed her head against the glass of the ballerina room, right? And she smashes it. And then the repeated footage of the dancers, and you realize that the dancers are projected on the ceiling while they Clockwork Orange lay. See her come to and the world dissolves in pixels kind of, but distorted, and she can hear Jordan Peterson being like, the reality, reality is what you accept. Only, let your subconsciousness sink. You hear him, the speech he gives when you're supposed to start the VR thing, so that you can fully immerse yourself in it. And then she takes a breath in the darkness. You can hear Florence Pugh go, and then credits. I am supposed to believe that Florence Pugh is now free. But the horror of that is, victory is a misogynistic VR world that is restricted by 1950s aesthetics and false utopia promises or whatever the fuck, right? For me, that doesn't work because you don't just get to go, and now she is free and gone, and Florence Pugh will totally not face the repercussions of murdering her husband and have to defend herself in the very real misogynistic world that she has always existed in. She just lived in a fabricated reality, VR, Twitch chat, incel creation. But that doesn't mean that that's self-contained and that trauma then is now gone, because that was created in reflection of the world that Florence Pugh lives in and that we all live in. So for Olivia Wilde to go, and now Florence Pugh is free, and she is a free wife because she's deliberately murdered her husband and also destroyed the reality that kept her in chains, right? Kept her, whatever. But for her to take a breath and then credits and make me feel relief, or allowing us to fully form the thought of, well, she's not okay now. I felt I got I felt I was I felt I was talked down the whole movie, and also with her fake feminist movie. Baby, Olivia Wilde lied to me this whole movie.
She lied to all of us.
She lied to all of us. The technology is advanced enough for them to feel that that is real. But again, it's like the Truman Show thing where it's like if you're told it's real, then you'll know it's real because you don't know anything else. Except the story in Don't Worry Darling is that these women have been, can't remember their life prior, and they think it's because they are so happy in victory. Whereas Truman Show, Truman grew up in that world and therefore doesn't know anything other than that. Yeah. Which is why it is so world-shattering to him. Whereas this story is more about coming to terms with your own oppression and then being protagonist enough to break out of it in a very violent way that is kind of sugar-coated. It was Inception, Truman Show, Ex Machina, but all worse and combined, and Florence Pugh was the lead. And the score was great. The set was great. There was some shots where I was like, wow, once that gets old, I'll be over it. And it didn't get old. I'm like, baby. It was like Plato's cave, but they were like, also, misogyny is gone now. I just...
You know, my favorite thing about the movie is like it feels like a movie. The movie is like film feels like a movie. You know, the reason film.
To be told like, well, the world is built by men, didn't you know? It's like, yeah, I fucking know. Of course I know. A lot of people know that. I don't need like this 1950s like aesthetic to frame that message for me to know that, like, yes, there are people who still live like that and do the labor of the housewife and feel that that is their place in the world and that is the way it should be because of the way they were raised and the way their husbands talk to them. But also, that's also not the way some people live. Like, marginalized and folks and people who face misogyny, that's not the way some of them live. Yeah. But to be told, well, all you need to do to break from the reality you've been taught, you know, is to just run really fast and, like, crash a car and fucking, like, really have the motivation and the curiosity to explore further. And something that Harry Styles tells to Florence Pugh as she's, like, freaking out before she kills him is, like, I did this for you, because the men go away to work in the real world when they're working at Victory. They're trying to make enough money to be able to pay to be in the Victory VR project. Like, Harry Styles guilts her that, look, you just get to stay at home and clean and cook and live the life of luxury while I work. I did this for you. I took you from your real life of being a overworked nurse and brought you here without your consent, without your knowledge. But shouldn't you be happy? Even though, like, Harry Styles dies in the movie, like, he's killed, and that's, like, the symbol of, like, Florence Pugh being freed from whatever. There's no repercussions. Like, it's like, you still, like, completely kidnapped your own girlfriend and forced her to be in this thing with you, and she had no idea and, like, lied to her. And it's like, you don't think women today don't know that they live under the heel of patriarchy? It's like this weird, like...
Yeah. Like ham-fisted kind of...
Yeah. And I'm like, I know that, Olivia Wilde. I know that screenwriters and creative team of Don't Worry Darling.
Thank you, Hollywood.
He never says Don't Worry Darling in the movie. Can't remember. If he did, I'd probably... My brain protected itself.
Probably, like,
I clapped so hard that I forgot that he said it. Yeah. It was rough. It was so rough. It was like that, like, whole incel Twitch streamer thing that happened in the Batman movie.
I know. I was just thinking, like, it's interesting that they're trying to get
the 2019
like,
Joker
radicalization of online.
Yeah,
which is interesting, but it hasn't been done.
Well, it's like then when you're like, oh, Jordan Peterson is radicalizing young boys to, like, hate their non-existent girlfriends or whatever.
Yeah, but it's not, like, actually tackling. It's just like a surface level.
No, because Florence Pugh's character probably still, you know, she works in a hospital. She's shown as working in, like, in that flashback.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, she probably has, like, an asshole boss at some point. It's probably really hard for her to... She seems to be the one who's, like, the breadwinner in the household, and that seems to piss off Harry Styles, and the whole thing where she shrugs him off, and he seems like he like feels that he, like, deserves that, and to escape that pain, he decides to kidnap his wife and force her into a 1950s world with him, where he struggles most and feels that he's deserving of her affection and care and company because look how hard he works, which again is like,
that doesn't, yeah.
Like, okay, like, yeah, but no. Yeah, it was like Clockwork Orange, Panopticon,
Truman Show,
Derrida. I just start naming off every... It was like that. All you need to do to escape misogyny and the clutches of the absolute horrifying false utopia that is created in the man's imaginary that benefits only the white cis het rich man is to just fucking lose your mind, have your friends completely like isolate you and then
marry Nick Kroll.
Don't worry, darling, no comma. That's all I have to say.